It's Richard Haggerty here, and I'd like to talk a bit today on somebody. Actually, this is more common than I would want it to be, but it's the consequences of people spending their money on cigarettes. Now, just to get this in perspective, it's not the only reason to quit. And of course, there's people out there who are stopping who are vaping and maybe doing other things, and they might argue that they're not spending very much. I can assure you there's a cost to your health, but let's park that for a minute. And there certainly are countries in the world that are very, very, where it's very, very costly to smoke. For instance, Australia is the most expensive country in the world. You need to buy a packet of Marlboro, around about $25 US, very closely followed by New Zealand. Then over here in the UK, it's about £12, which will be about $12 or $13, something like that. Actually, that's Ireland's just a very small bit ahead of us. But those are kind of some of the prices, and you can work that out for yourself. For instance, here in the UK, that's about £5,000 a year if you're smoking 20 a day. Of course, people can do it cheaper as well. But listen, this is what comes to it. And honestly, it breaks my heart. This is a message I received. I absolutely hate doing this, and I don't know how we managed it, but we smoked the past week. Such a stupid thing to do. Our food cupboards are empty, and it's still days until our shopping night. I just feel mad. I feel mad at me and my husband. I thought we'd finished our last cigarette, and we went out and bought another packet and spent our food money on it. I know we're idiots. We've rolled things, and we're re-rolling stuff that's in the ashtray. Okay, we're in a desperate situation. Our cupboards used to be brimming with food, and we didn't smoke. I don't know why we started again. We spent over $200 this week gone on a hideous amount of tobacco. Now, first thing is to say, most people are not in such a dire situation. But actually, if you're addicted to something, whether it's psychological or otherwise, then you've got to do something about it. If you really want to change and transform. And there are resources. And here in the UK, I just noticed my friend and colleague Dave's popped in the comments there about NHS Stop Smoking. Absolutely, there's tools out there, there's resources out there. And it's absolutely fundamental, because you've got to put in, you need a plan to quit. You need a plan to quit. And it's no good just trying to make a big change like this. In most cases, just by doing it cold turkey without any support whatsoever. So it doesn't really matter the kind of support that you're getting, but you do need to make sure that you have got some support so you can put some kind of reasonable plan in place. Okay. Now, here's the thing. Most people aren't in quite that dire a situation. There are a lot, though. There are a lot of families out there actually who are really struggling financially, and yet they're still spending the majority of their resources on here. Why? Because there is an unresolved emotional need. There's a set of emotional needs. Smoking is like an emotional crutch, okay, that holds people up, and it gives them certain things at an emotional level. There's an association that's been made at the unconscious level that smoking either is calming, or it's a treat, or it's a reward, or it's a way to handle stress. But what happens is the stress of actually having to find somewhere to go and smoke, of spending all your money on it, of building your life around the impulses inside you to smoke, is really what causes the problem for people. Okay, so it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And we know this because we know that a large part of what holds habits in place are the psychological triggers and the set of expectations that go along with that. Okay, now the good news is, to make any kind of change, you've got to be able to do a couple of things. The first is to take a step back and actually look at the situation. Kind of look at it objectively, as though you were watching it on a television screen, as though you were watching a soap or watching a film, and to look at that and see what's going on in a very kind of like clear, measured way. And if you're watching a film about some people who are spending all their money, so they didn't have any food and they were rolling cigarettes up from an ashtray, you'd probably take a look at that and think, these guys have got to make a change, right? This is pretty poor. All right, they need to make a change. They've got to do something different here. Okay, and that's the first thing, to start to recognize that in yourself. It's very easy to recognize it in other people. It takes a lot more courage and a lot more self-care and self-understanding to do that for yourself, but fundamentally you need to do that. Okay. Secondly, and this is really, really vital, is you've got to find a strong reason to do it. Okay, and it's really interesting now, for more than 2 decades, working with hundreds and hundreds of people around the world to smoke. Okay, there's a very, very common pattern that I've noticed, which is this awareness that we talked about kind of starts building up over time. It's not necessarily in one go, but there will be a moment that is the straw that broke the camel's back. And it could be going in the kitchen and recognizing there's nothing in there. It could be looking at yellow stained fingers. It could be waking up in the middle of the night and realizing that they can't get a good night's sleep because they've got to get up and feed their nicotine addiction. It could be someone saying to them, rejecting them, going out on a date for them because of the way that they smell. It could be anything like that, or it could be something much smaller, but they get to a point where they look at the habit and they say to themselves, enough is enough. Enough is enough. I'm not going to do this anymore. Enough is enough. And that's the point, when you get to that point where enough is enough, that there's like a kind of tipping point in sort of mental pressure. And at that point, any plan that you put in place is going to start to, it's got something to attach itself to. Why does the plan have something to attach itself to when you have a strong reason to quit? Because it creates a strong emotional connection, and it lets your subconscious know, okay, something's going on here. I need something to change. Okay, so the subconscious is very good at supporting us to do things automatically, habit-based, and if it understands that the habit that we're engaged in is no longer achieving the higher positive intention, okay, if it's not helping you relax but it's causing stress, if it's not helping you to cope better with life but it's actually making life worse, if it's causing you not to be able to eat food, and once you realize that at a deep emotional level and you have a strong reason linked with that, then there'll be the opportunity to change. At that point, that's when it becomes much, much easier to start to implement a plan. So what kind of plan could help someone from stopping smoking? Well, we've already seen there are resources out there. So there'll be free resources on websites. There'll be books that you can grab in your local library. There are videos that you can watch like this one. There are no end of stuff that you can do. There's no excuse not to be able to get educated now in this day and age. There is stuff everywhere. Okay, there is a problem. Okay, and one of the problems is trying to change habits consciously using willpower can be very, very difficult. Okay, it can be done. I was speaking with somebody recently who did it by themselves, and they started when they were 35, and they kept falling off the wagon. And they said, "I'm really pleased, because I finally quit." And I said, "Fantastic." I said, "And how old are you?" And they said, "Oh, 75." So they took 40 years, and they got there. And kudos to them. Kudos to them. I take my hat off to them. But here's the thing. How long do you want to wait? There are people out there who specialize in stopping smoking, helping people to quit now, to quit in one session. They'll back up and they will give you any full support that you need. And it really depends on your reason and your motivation. And really what you have to do is you have to say, okay, if I don't change now, what are the consequences going to be? What are the consequences going to be in a year's time, in 5 years' time, to my health, to my family, to my wealth, to just my sense of well-being? What will the consequences be if I don't change, if I don't do anything, if I just leave it to chance? And those people who really take the time to do that, to look at the cold, hard kind of reality, the facts, inevitably come to the conclusion at some point that that they want to make a change. And that's where it can be really good to go and speak to somebody, go and meet with somebody, go and speak with somebody who works and specialises in this, because you can stop smoking, you can quit. It's absolutely possible. Loads of people have done it. You can too.